In this video, I talked to Dan Andrews from the Tropical MBA podcast. It's one of my favorite shows, and I've listened to, I think, every single episode, many of them twice. As soon as I got started working online, I checked out the Tropical MBA podcast and just really connected with Dan and Ian. So it's an honor to interview him today. He joined me from the TMBA Manor down in Austin, Texas. So kind of a beautiful background. Quick confession, I messed up on my mic levels for the first few minutes, but we fixed them up. It shouldn't be too bad, but just want to let you know about that. We talk about the different branches of the Tropical MBA empire, so to speak. So we look at Dynamite Jobs, Dynamite Circle, and Dynamite Deals, plus the podcast in general. In a lot of ways, it was just a conversation between two guys, and I maybe did a little bit of a disservice by not trying to get straight up actionable information from Dan. But one thing that we spent a lot of time on, and it was sort of the trigger that made me email Dan to see if he would join me on the show, was Dan was on Noah Kagan's podcast last fall in September of 2019. And Noah was giving Dan advice and tips and asked a lot of hard questions about Dynamite Jobs and what he was going to do with it. So I didn't 100% agree with the advice and sort of the angle that Noah was taking. So we talk about that. I don't know if I offered any better advice, but I at least disagreed a little bit with Noah's approach. So we talk about that quite a bit. Before I send it over to the interview, you should check out the TMBA podcast. And if you like YouTube, you're watching YouTube right now, check out their live streams. They've been doing live streams since the COVID-19 quarantine started. So they're doing 5 shows per week, noon Eastern time. And check out their channel. I'll put a link in the description. Thanks a lot, Dan, for joining me, and we'll see you around. Hey, what's going on? It's Doug Cunnington here for the Doug Show, and I am honored to be chatting with my new friend, Dan Andrews. How are you today?
Excellent, Doug. And I want to apologize in advance for my poor video setup here. I'm still getting used to this YouTube world, so apologies in advance for my dark eyes or something. I don't know how to light things or how it all works, but
well, you can't beat natural outdoor lighting, and you look like you're in a beautiful place. Is that a fake background or is that real?
This is real. I'm on quarantine, living in the backyard of my business partner. We quarantined together for fun, and lucky for me, he's into RVs and campers and has all kinds of fun toys. So I'm living better out here in quarantine than I would be if it were up to me. So I got really lucky.
It's awesome out there. I mean, Austin is a great place, and I guess the worst part right now is it's probably hard to get some brisket and barbecue shipped out to your
unavailable.
Okay,
yeah.
Man. So it is a great honor to talk to you, Dan, because I have listened to your show, Tropical MBA, since I got started online in 2013, and I have dropped off a lot of the other podcasts that I started listening to, but I listened to all the shows and I went back all the way into the archive. So thanks a lot for joining me. You've been a big influence.
Yeah, man. It's amazing to hear. I'm sure you're hearing stuff like that too. And I'm the same way as you in that, it wasn't really my aim to start a podcast. I'm actually more interested in listening to them. And there was a certain point when I was just like, I got something a little different to say or a little different perspective than everybody else. I might as well pick up the mic as well. But I started as a listener. I was early days, 2007, listening to anybody talking about how to live this lifestyle. And it was the same deal. It inspired me. And so much of what we were able to do was because of those early little pirate radio guys being willing to lay it out there for the rest of us. And so I appreciate what you're doing. I listened to your show. And so, for me, it's not like a tactic. It's like a lifestyle. I'm into radio, man. I used to skip school and listen to Howard Stern in the mornings when I was growing up, and something about when the podcast format came out. And it's oh, this isn't a job anymore. This is just a hustle or whatever. It really sucked me in. So yeah, I'm not going anywhere. I'm doing the podcast, even if it's just you and like some other dude listening to my mom. I'm doing it.
That's awesome. And you guys started back in like 2009. So, I mean, really, you guys have been in it for a long time.
Yeah. And for anybody like thinking about this, oh man, like there's a gazillion podcasts or whatever, that's exactly how I felt in 2009 when we started our podcast. I was like, the world doesn't need another business podcast. Well, maybe it does. I mean, maybe it does.
And I was thinking, hey, in 2009, I was like really into beer, listening to beer podcasts at the time. And I was like, oh, there's too many beer podcasts. I shouldn't even try. And
Right.
I wish I would have started back then. I mean, that was like the heyday, and it's the heyday now, and it'll keep being that way, I guess. So
It's one of those things where it's like it can be counterintuitive. On the internet, we all want to be unique and different. You walk into any market in the world and there's just like a bunch of wallets and belts and jeans and stuff. And you think to yourself like, oh, I shouldn't start a jean business, but there should be another part of your brain that's like, man, people really like these jeans. So just because there's a lot of podcasts, that potentially is a really good sign for you and the niches you're looking at.
oh yeah. And before we get into sort of the meat of the episode here, you like road trips, right?
Big time.
Okay. So do you have any like specific memorable ones or like big ones that are coming up soon that you're just really pumped about?
Well, this is a new thing because I'm kind of clipped my wings, Doug. I mean, a lot of my road trips have been on bicycles and have been planning epic cycling adventures in the Pyrenees. In fact, that's sort of in terms of road tripping, I'd say it's like a serious 4-day bicycle excursion in the Pyrenees between France and Spain, which I think is got to be by anybody's standard one of the just finest places to ride a road bike in the whole world. And so this year I won't have those roads. And so I'm thinking about I'm working on building a van. I've been a van owner for many, many years, but I want to sort of upgrade and give me an opportunity to see a lot of places that I haven't seen in North America, in part because I've been so plain and international focused. So head on out to Colorado and spend some time there, head up to the Pacific Northwest, Vermont, hopefully Quebec if we can cross borders here soon. There's a lot of places on my list that have been on the back burner. I'm really looking forward to that. That's sort of my, I guess one of the personal things that's keeping me motivated and during downtimes during the quarantine is thinking about, man, how exciting is it to explore this amazing continent that we've been blessed to been born on.
Indeed. And my wife and I, we didn't do as much international travel because we like to travel with our dog. So we
Mm-hmm.
actually did tons of road trips. I've been to all 50 states. My wife has too. And yeah, there's so much to see here in North America.
Can I share something with you? When I like grew up in a shitty place. Not a shitty place, but not that great of a place. Not a place for a young guy who wants to do something. So I moved to California. And there was a bunch of other young people that want to do stuff in California. Fast forward a couple of years, all those California people are moving to Texas. Now I moved to Texas, and now all these Texas people are moving to Colorado. What the heck is happening in Colorado? Did you guys move there for lifestyle reasons, or was it chosen for you?
I think it's probably the weed. You can just go to a store. It is an essential business right now, just like a liquor store or a gun shop, which is all true, by the way. But my wife got a job in the Boulder area. So really good offer, good opportunity. So we moved from Bozeman, but we're originally from the Atlanta area. So we had sort of remote jobs and some flexibility. So we just decided, hey, you know what? We're going to get out of the Southeast and head to the mountains. So we ended up moving to Bozeman, Montana, which pretty small town. Have you been there?
No.
It's pretty cool, and I actually bumped into someone who was a guest on your show, Andrew Udarian.
No way.
So I had a couple of beers
What
with
a cool
him.
guy.
Yeah, great dude. And yeah, we just chatted about business, and yes, very small world.
That's crazy. It is.
And
that's another takeaway if people are looking for their notepads here is like actually when you get out there and start meeting people making it work, it can be a pretty small world, and that can be a great thing if you're looking to join the ranks. It's not some amorphous group of people. Like you said, we all know each other like 1, 2, 3 degrees of separation. And so if you can make friends with a few of us, then it's not that hard to figure out like who's for real, and like who's just putting up BS on the internet, trying to make a quick buck or whatever.
And I think like the longevity like really makes a difference too, because I was around for a little while. Like I said, in 2013, I was kind of dabbling, but I didn't really know what I was doing for a couple years. And but I'm still around now, hopefully indicating that I kind of know what I'm doing a little bit. But
Totally.
so we sort of jumped right in, and a lot of people may not know who you are, Dan. So what do you do? What's your deal? Tell us a little about the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I sort of read a bunch of articles around the last, uh, uh, what would you call it, financial downturn. Um, that it was in part the financial downturn, but it was in part just like working a job that was a good job, but I just started to question sort of that worldview, and it was a very entrepreneurial job. So I got turned on to this whole community, and we were also manufacturing in China. So we were like a manufacturing custom services company, making furniture mostly, and it just kind of opened my eyes to like not only work from home stuff like these developers I was hiring, but also just like kind of hyper globalizing a business. It doesn't need to exist under one roof. And of course, the other side of my brain was like, well, that's cool because now you could travel, you could have fun, all this stuff. So we ended up starting a product business, in part to explore these ideas, but also as a response to this services business model that we didn't enjoy working for. We didn't enjoy being a slave to our clients. Basically, we started chronicling that journey on Tropical MBA. And eventually, Tropical MBA itself, the podcast, has turned into a business with a variety of different elements to it. But that's really the story. It's just a story of like two kids who were disappointed with their careers and got a sniff of this thing called entrepreneurship that promised sort of wealth on your own terms. And because we weren't guys that were like, let's get rich and all that, it was more like, this life is a little disappointing. This corporate life is a little disappointing. Might we have a life where we have more sort of autonomy and pride in what we do and flexibility? And the TMBA is really just a living document of that lifestyle. And now it's involved so many people that we know mutually, just seeing what their journeys are all about as well.
And what's the team look like these days?
Today, I want to say there's about 5 of us full time. There are a couple part-timers, and we have a few contractors. And then the really cool part, which is going to be a little bit of a bummer this year, is we have a really amazing long-term seasonal staff that comes in for our events, that we host events for our listeners. And I always have this like fantasy, because we used to have a bigger business. We used to have over 15 employees plus, our podcast stuff. And I remember there's this like boardroom at one of our conferences, and there's like 15 people in there, and the boardroom's buzzing, and everybody's like hosting the event, and it's so exciting. I think, man, it would be kind of cool to run a business like this. But day to day for me, it's 5 of us. It's Zoom calls. It's a tight group. We all are living all around the world and working from home.
Very cool. And how do you and Ian sort of divide up the roles?
Well, between me and Ian.
Yeah. How do you guys handle that?
This is a sensitive topic because basically what we do is we do everything together, which is sort of interesting. And then it used to be totally different, where I did podcast and he did the old business. And since we sold that other business, we exited in 2011 or 2015. I wrote a book about it called Before the Exit, which I think is a really good book. It's not just it's short, it's cheap. I'll send it to you for free if you email me, dan@tropicalmba.com. It's basically about thought experiments you can do at any stage of a business that kind of like, when you sell a business, you're forced to ask these like existential questions about like what amount of money that meant to you and what were you doing that whole time. And I think it's very strange to think about that 50% of people who exit a business are miserable about it. And so anyway, I wrote this sort of like a post log to the whole thing. Since that time, Ian and I have sort of converged and tried to find ways to collaborate more and more. But it's sort of been interesting. Like we do a lot of our team calls together. I almost think we're kind of like a husband-wife team, like all of our staff members probably know like, well, if you want to do this kind of thing, you better call mom. And if you want to do this kind of thing, you better call dad, because we have our tendencies. Ian does all the financial stuff, and I do most of like the sort of marketing stuff as well, and a lot of the writing.
It sounds like a pretty good codependent relationship, but you guys are managing it well, it seems.
Yeah,
So,
we definitely got our problems.
so one of the branches of the business is Dynamite Jobs, and it's kind of like a job board marketplace kind of thing. Can you define it a little bit better?
Yeah, I would say Dynamite Jobs is a job board for remote jobs that we think are really cool.
Awesome.
And that definition changes as the industries change. But an example of something that we don't think is all that cool is, say, like a big corporate sales job that offers you to work from home every other week or a few days a week. Like typically when we started this site in 2007, a lot of work from home opportunities were either scams or kind of like corporate, sometimes work from home stuff, or commission sales jobs. And there was a well-established world of technical remote jobs. Because of course, if you can build up a web app, those people have been on the road for a long time. But there's this new generation of knowledge workers that are making their living online by being administrative staff, by being marketing staff, by being operation customer support. And they focus on our community. And there was really no home for them. Aside from, there's a good site called We Work Remotely, but still they have a pretty big, broad audience. And we thought, man, our community is so cool. These jobs are so amazing. It's not quite legible to the broader world yet, but we should pull together a website that puts all the best jobs in this industry, like the bootstrap remote internet business industry, in one place. And that's basically what Dynamite Jobs is.
In September of 2019, you were on Noah Kagan's podcast, and it was kind of like a coaching session, and he was asking tough questions, why? And I love Noah and his approach in general most of the time. But as he was going through and as you guys were chatting about like where to go with Dynamite Jobs, I was like Dan and Ian, like they know how to make money. Like they're not beginners. So part of it, I was like, is Noah like asking kind of the wrong questions? But am I off base with that? I mean, one specific example, he was like, how can you make 10K more per month with your existing business? And you were like, sell sponsorships. I could do that immediately. But I got the feeling that you wanted Dynamite Jobs to be a bigger thing, not, hey, how can we squeeze 10K a month out of our existing audience and fan base and that sort of thing. So am I off base, or
No,
what was that? What was that
well,
like?
first off, your opinions are just as valuable as anybody else's. So I think it would be interesting, and I should task you with giving me some free advice on this show. I'd be very curious to hear what you would do if you were the founder of Dynamite Jobs. In Noah's case, I think I felt I think his advice is really good, probably for me, and even certainly for somebody who, if Dynamite Jobs was their only business. So it's this idea of, keep the lights on tomorrow with your customers' cash flow, and that way you're always tapped into this vein of like what's valuable in the world. We face this enormous risk that we could spend all this money posting all these jobs online for the next 5 years, and then at the end of the day, nobody really cares. Nobody really give us any money for it, or some other job board just does such a better job, and it's game over. And we are exposing ourselves to that risk by not taking Noah's advice, which is figure out a way to turn it into a solid business tomorrow, for sure.
Well, and with that said, I mean, you guys had an exit, you have other business areas, so you don't have to make money on Dynamite Jobs in the short term. So at this point in time, we're recording in early April of 2020. The world has changed a little bit, which we'll get into in a second. But right now, like, what's the vision for Dynamite Jobs?
Dynamite Jobs is like, some people go out and buy a hot tub or a cool car or a flight to Paris. We went out and bought Dynamite Jobs. Of course, we saved a little money because we didn't buy the .com. But we do invest a good deal of money every month in going out and harvesting these great jobs. If you email us, we help people get connected with our community. We just feel like it's like a totally. I go on Facebook and I see people that I knew a world away writing these weird emotional posts, and then they like put this big price coaching thing at the end of it, and that's cool. That's one way you can like run a business. But for us, it's like it's this opportunity to do something that we really believe in, and like I feel if you really want to grow your business, you get connected with one of our candidates at Dynamite Jobs. Now, 5 years from now, I might not be able to figure out a way to make a trade-off that makes us profit. But in the meantime, there's no downside for us so long as our business is healthy, because it's really fun and we feel like it's a legitimate value in the world. I know, like, man, I'm talking like a hippie here, Doug. I don't even, but it's kind of that. You're right. Like, we do have a profitable business, so that business can have, like, some businesses start a charity, for example. But we thought, man, these jobs are like gold. They're gold, you know? And I'll tell you this, you can make an immediate business case that site is really popular relative to our other brands, because it has something that the world values more than like me and my business partner talking on a podcast, for example. So it's another platform for us to grow an audience or potentially put new products in front of them. As an example, right now, college alternatives or candidate training would be an immediately viable business at dynamitejobs.com. I mean, we have, I want to say, I don't know the exact number, but I think it's like almost 7,000 like deep profiles, like not just like resume and name and email, but like full survey responses. So I got 7,000 like basically prospects, right? The problem is if I wanted to like retool my whole staff or my next 4 weeks of my life and go build a product for those folks, that's an opportunity. And that's like the kind of optionality that I think being an entrepreneur opens up to you. And like you said at the top, I'm really interested in doing different things, like not competing with colleges right now. And that's okay. Like, it's a lifestyle business. I'm not optimizing for investors or anything like that.
Exactly. And I think the other part that you have the luxury of is, you're building this platform. You have all this data, and maybe you don't know what to do with it at first, but you can pivot to the right area, which you guys have done, multiple times in, the different endeavors that you've been in. So just because you have this plan right now, like, maybe you'll figure out what to do with it later.
It's true. And you got to figure out like which projects you want to bench press, like just really push them over the edge. Cause I don't know, you're in this business too. I've probably bought 100 domains that had like some kind of content out or some kind of idea or pitch, and you just can't focus on all of them. But it's not a bad idea to just put them out there and see what happens. I mean, we put out this job board in our secret competitive edge, which was that we had this community of 1,400 entrepreneurs that had the sexiest, coolest jobs in the world. For me 10 years ago, I would have died to work for these companies. I would have died to work for guys like you, like, what a great career choice. We put them out to the world, and the world was like, hell yeah. And they just subscribed like crazy. That's basically what we wanted to do. I mean, beyond that, I'm not so sure I want to figure out a way to make $10,000 a month by building myself another job or whatever. Like I said, I think if you give it time, let it breathe, like, things might present themselves, or it might become one of those 99 domains that just didn't work out, like most of them don't.
Yep. And I think, I'll just beat up Noah one more time since he's
Let's
not
do
here.
that, because he's a real jerk. What a sweet guy, I'll tell you what.
So the other risk. So right now, is Dynamite Jobs like profitable, or it's just,
No.
Okay.
No, we're burning cash on it.
Okay.
Sure.
And, Noah was sort of beating you guys up on that. But again, like I said, we'll beat up Noah. If you guys turned it around and you were making 10K a month, or maybe, you boosted it and you're making 20K a month, but it wasn't like quite fitting your vision. Like you said, you don't want to create another job for yourself. Who wants to do that? And you're sort of, golden handcuffs, right? Like, not that you needed the money coming from that business line over there, but if you made it profitable, you sure would hate to pull the plug on it. You're like, well, we're making money. It's kind of dumb to not do it. So at least you have flexibility at this point. So
Well, you do this with affiliate sites. So like typically the more people or leads or customers you need to make a business profitable, the longer your run up is going to be. And typically the more distributed amongst customers your profits are, the more sexy that business model is. So it's really sexy to have a popular podcast and like sell $40,000 worth a month of advertisers because like 1 million people listen to it or whatever. Like that's super sexy. But if I went to anybody and said, okay, well, build a podcast with 1 million listeners, that project could take 5 or 10 years. Whereas if I said, build a podcast about like implementing HubSpot in your business for car dealerships, and you have like 500 listeners, but 5 of them become $10,000 a month clients, that's also a completely legitimate way to grow a business. And I think if someone held a gun to my head and said, I want you to do like HubSpot implementation services business and like go get it done in 5 weeks, I think I could, a bunch of cups of coffee and like brush off the ultimate sales machine and figure out my pitch. And I think I could make that work, but it's a less sexy business model. And so a lot of the things that Noah was advising me to do with Dynamite Jobs are less sexy business models that can be implemented immediately. And in this case, I'm willing to let some bait troll behind me in the water because I'm focused on other things. So what are the sort of things what might you do with Dynamite Jobs if it were in your portfolio?
At this point in time, is there sort of an equal demand for the companies that are hiring and the people that want to get hired?
Well, since the virus showed up, basically there's been a lot of hiring freezes except for content marketing. Just great. People have a high demand. Content companies are excited right now. And the candidates have gone up. The traffic from candidate side is almost like 100% month over month. Like we have tons of interest in candidates and less jobs. So it's an unequal marketplace.
Okay. Yeah, you know what? I'm not sure what I would do honestly, because I sort of like more hands-off sort of things, and I'm not
Totally.
100% sure what to. I mean, you guys have both sides. I know it sounds like there's going to be a lot more freelancers in this new world we're living in, but yeah, I'm not really sure what to do other than like taking Noah's ideas. Well, how can you make 10K a month?
Yeah.
And I'll just echo the stuff that I was just bashing a second ago. But
But you know what the cool thing is like I'm agree with you. I don't want to. I've already done the fun bit, and I get to enjoy this asset that does this thing that I truly value, which is, our tropes on our podcast is always like build a team, build a team. Like you're gonna work less, you're gonna have more fun if you build a team. You're gonna have an asset on your hands, and we just believe in it. Now, let's say you have a business relevant to like people who are job seekers right now. You could have a resume review company. You could have like a Tommy Griffiths has a company called ClickMinded where he teaches people SEO training for $500 or $1,000. Man, you pay Tommy Griffith $1,000 to learn SEO, and you understand all that stuff. You can then go get yourself a $3,000 a month job, and so now all of a sudden you own that company. I have this job board with over 20,000 email subscribers, and I just say, hey, how about you pay me like $1,500 a month? Pull together a little package for you. You'll be the top mention in our newsletter every week. You'll have a little banner on the side, and when people want enhanced recruitment services or whatever, they're gonna like go right to Doug's office instead of to my office. That's the simple kind of thing. Now all of a sudden I got a passive income stream, and that's the kind of thing I'd be looking for.
yep, I guess you solved the problem. Yeah, do that, and you're in good shape there.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, it's all right. It's all right.
I'm not very professional, man.
I'm not either. This is perfect. So, okay. And I'm not sure if I like followed the thread exactly, and we're going to migrate over to Dynamite Deals a little bit. And it sounded like maybe after you talked to Noah that you were like, hey, we should do this deal thing. And then you sort of spread yourself again. Now, I guess that maybe was already in place, but I'm not sure. It seems like it was it is a successful other branch of your business. I know some of our mutual friends over at Content Refined, one of the first deals out there. And yeah, so how's Dynamite Deals going?
Yeah, me and Maddie, the founder of Content, one of the co-founders of Content Refined, were gossiping about you behind your back, talking about our mutual love of Doug, and that was just a surprising connection, but actually not so surprising, like you mentioned. Um, well, so I got really inspired by the call with Noah because it clarified what I was doing, and Dynamite Jobs was my idea, and or I took an ownership of that idea, right? I might not have been my idea, but I felt like, man, this is my thing now. I'm thinking about it, and I got, as an entrepreneur, you get pressure from every direction, like, oh, we should be making a little bit more money, and everybody has their ideas, and sometimes you just have to assert your vision. Like, man, I can't convince everybody of what I'm seeing right now, but I always felt like we were wasting our time trying to monetize a job site platform. We should be focused on building the platform. And that is going to put us in a position. I had all kinds of rationale for it in my mind in terms of what I could flip the site for on a marketplace based on the amount of money I spent for each lead, et cetera, et cetera. But my vision was, let's stop wasting our time when the real opportunity is to build a marketplace here. So when I talked to Noah and he starts telling me this other strategy, which is completely legitimate, of, I call it a 10 true clients business model, or 100 true customers, or 1,000 true fans. You work it up, and you guys are working on affiliate sites. So you're talking about like 100,000 true visitors or whatever. You think about how much you got to charge everybody to make a living. And when he told me that, I was basically like, you know what? F that. Like, I'm not doing that. And I was like, you guys want me to make $10,000 a month? We got a basic cash flow that already happens in our business every single month that's worth more than that. It's called Dynamite Deals. Our members in our private forum, if they're willing to go through a review process, we will allow them to promote an amazing deal in our forum. Otherwise, there's no self-promotion. So I thought, man, we could really help these folks create these public deals. If they're public, they're going to get more attention. And that was kind of like, it was a little bit of one of those, like, I felt challenged by Noah. Like, man, I know how to make a $10,000 a month business. I can do it, but I would never choose this business to do it with. And so, yeah, I felt challenged. And so a couple weeks later, we launched Dynamite Deals. And within our first few months, we did $100,000 in sales. So now Dynamite Deals really has to change in this environment because people have pulled back their marketing spend. So our focus now is just to get rid of the money element for the time being and focus on just the best deals like that. Because basically a lot of our deals were around like high level marketing services, which, they're going to see a big hit in the short term. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, I think that's another luxury of having a profitable business is like you can do things that are cool, like pull together deals, and you don't have to make a money on every single one. The most important thing for me would be like a brand building thing, which is like, I always tell the team, like, we've never put out a deal that would compromise people thinking that we don't put out great deals. Like that's the whole, it doesn't matter how much money we make. It matters how good of a deal it is. Like that's what's going to grow a deals company. So yeah, that's the idea with Dynamite Deals. A lot of these, by the way, have been just born out of problems. Like, like people were coming to our events and trying to hire people, and they were trying to use the forum to hire people. So we broke off a job board. Same deal with the deals. Everybody wants to promote themselves, of course. Well, you create a productive way that's like a win-win for people to promote themselves.
One cool thing with Dynamite Deals is, and you guys mention it as you're pitching the deals, it's like a plug and play thing that you could buy to improve your business right away. So it's a very clear like value proposition. Like you mentioned, these are great deals. Like it's cheaper, it's a properly vetted company. And if I remember right, you guys wanted to bring 20 deals in 2020. Is that right?
That's right.
And obviously with COVID-19, things are shifting. So how are you guys trying to pivot and navigate? You said you're trying to remove the money element and just bring good deals. So what's the approach for the rest of the year?
Man, we just stomped the brakes. I mean, it's tough because like a lot of the deals we were negotiating with these like high level service companies with that, it's tough to like maintain a margin and pull together a deal, and they're multi-$1,000 projects and stuff. And so now we're seeing a lot of more motivated companies that want to create deals with us. And And we're also just trying to figure out, it's just hard to pull together these deals. I think that that's the bottom line, because what Noah's company does with deals, for example, is he sells software at a discount. And it's really relatively simple and elegant, I'd say, because it's just like, here's a million potential buyers, just slash your prices and you get the list and then we get the great deal. Whereas Dynamite Deals is much more about vetting the company, the discovery of the service. It really happened like, we used to sit around. I mean, we could probably do this for like live on the podcast, where between my and your skill sets and resources, we could probably cook up like a kind of a cutting edge marketing deal that if we only sold it to 10 companies, but it was like $5,000 a pop, it would be really super valuable. And it's just kind of a way to like kind of get a little bump in your business and move things along. And the bottom line is those deals are really tough to cut. And that's kind of what we struggle with. And that's why we set what I felt like was an achievable goal of 20. But basically now I think we're faced with the reality that we're not going to make any money off of those deals for the next 6 months. And so what should they look like? And the bottom line is I think we're doing more facilitation within the forum right now. And then we'll see about promotion to the public.
Very good. Yeah, it sounds like a tough like pivot. Everyone's sort of like pulling back to wait and see the secondary impacts of what's going on. It's kind of obviously very crazy.
I mean, Dynamite Deals is like these productized services companies are really focused on, total bootstrappers running their thing from their laptop who have a lot more free cash flow than time. And like that equation has changed for a lot of people in the last month. And so what we're seeing on our job board is like, well, instead of paying $3,500 a month to a content marketing agency or to the cool new service that I think is going to pay off one day, people are saying, you know what, I'll go out and get a part-time content writer at an all-time low price. And that's actually the Dynamite Deal. The Dynamite Deal is hiring right now. And so I think that just internally, I took my deals guy and I put him on other stuff because I said, man, we gotta change what we're doing here. We're not going to throw events this year. We're not. So that's also just the internal thing is my deal guys is doing other stuff. So.
Gotcha. And I think here's a business idea for people that want to start a services business, which I don't want to start a services business. You got to deal with clients and all that stuff. But I have a feeling there's probably a lot of new freelancers out there. You're going to be able to hire content writers. I would start a content company, get a couple PMs in place, and have that machine running. So I think
100%.
Did you guys have a guest a couple months ago that started a content company built to sell?
Yeah. Look up contentpros.io or Tommy Joyner on the Tropical MBA pod, and 2 episodes, one where he described exactly how to build that company in a way that is often counterintuitive, which I really appreciated. And then, he showed up a few months later saying he sold it. So what a boss. I love that.
And there's just going to be a ton of people like looking for freelance gigs where they can work from home or make a little money on the side or something like that. So I think there's a big opportunity because I know folks are still wanting to publish content. So if you can make it easier for them, you'll be.
Yeah, we got to. I totally agree with you. It's a wonderful idea.
And let's talk about the DC a little bit. That's Dynamite Circle. And tell us about the name first.
Yeah, maybe unfortunate. I don't know. I got like my little DC hat on. The DC started in 2011. It was basically a mastermind, an in-person mastermind for legitimate entrepreneurs. That was the idea of like, it still is today. I'm sure you guys are in the affiliate marketing space, so you understand that you go out on the web and you see a lot of like scam, like straight up outright scams, to people doing unsavory things, to people doing kind of like gray area unsavory things, like a lot of people that just they're a self-licking ice cream cone. They don't do what they say. All that kind of stuff. And we just thought when we started meeting people in real life, we realized that what's on the internet is only like 1% of reality. Like 2% of DC members have a personal blog where they talk about how they make money. The other 98% just make money. And so the real valuable thing is to get in person and to meet these people. And that's really what the mission of the Dynamite Circle was always about. We just said, hey, anybody who listens to our podcast, we're going to host a meetup, and it's going to be in the middle of nowhere. And so if you show up, you know you're going to be legit. And it was really like you had to take a ferry and a plane and get a visa and all this kind of stuff. And it was like on a Thursday, like nobody with a job is coming to this thing. And there was 19 people that showed up back in 2011. And we said, man, we got to hang out in a virtual forum now that we all know each other. We want to share tips and stuff. And that just kept going. The actual name itself, I owned a publishing company at the time called Dynamite Publishing, and now it's called Dynamite Ventures. And we were sitting in a circle on a resort patio. And so there you go. There's another unfortunate domain name purchase.
Dynamites. That's awesome. And you mentioned it's for like real entrepreneurs. And I think at one point it was a little more open, but there's some like joining requirements these days, right?
Sorry, I'm on a public street here.
Sorry.
It never was open. We've always reviewed every single application. We've made exceptions for people that we think are cool and scrappy. Like sometimes people try to sneak in. This happened like a handful of times I can remember where people like try to sneak in a really clever way because they like met somebody at an event and they were like someone's younger brother or something like that. And it's like, okay, because it's like the money thing works like 85% of the time. Like you must have a business that creates this amount of revenue, but that's not the criteria. That's the best thing we found, Doug, but that's not really what it's all about, because when you get into that like DC tribe and you show up at the events and it's like people are on the same wavelength, the guys who've exited an $8 million business love hanging out with the scrappy services woman who built a $50,000 a year thing her first year, whatever. Like, because there's so much. It's about a culture more than a level. But one of the things we have seen over the years is like the overall level of income for members as they've gotten older and stuck with their businesses has gone up for sure.
Very cool. And funny thing, I mean, I've been a fan of the show for a very long time, and I never felt like I was the right fit for the DC. And then I'm not sure why. And then I started imposter syndrome, something like that. I don't know. And then I started having like a lot of my students and people that I know in the DC, and they're like, oh yeah, man, you actually got a mention at one of the like DC BKK or something like that. And I was like, oh really? That is insane. So maybe I'll join. I'll put in an application, well, make it official, you know.
It's one of these things, like, I think it makes sense for your friends to rope you in. It's like, why don't we don't sell it. It's not like a thing that we do, because that's really the value. It's like we don't do things for our members in there. We are facilitators. We try to host the events that we would want to go to. And we try to keep it like really authentic and to a way. Like I've had handfuls of people bomb into our events and say, why don't you videotape these and put them up on the web? And I was like, no, you don't get it. Like that's not who we are. Like we're here to like build friendships that like last over years. And so that's typically how people get involved in the community, is they bring a trusted friend to one of our events and say, you have to meet these people. They're just different. They're on a different wavelength than here. And that's why I enjoy doing the business, and I keep it punk rock that way, because I want to enjoy doing it, you know. And I think with communities, it's like it's not going to be like this big, you know, I don't know. It's not meant to be some big business, you know. It's meant to be something that's like a really fun thing for the people involved, and that's sort of how we run it.
Very cool. And I think the events, because I've heard so much about them, and again, we have several mutual friends, and I'm like, oh man, I gotta make it out to one of these. So I'm sorry you had to cancel your one in Austin, which would have been in the last couple of weeks, right? Yeah,
it would have been last weekend. That was a bummer.
And do you have any? Are you guys just waiting to see like how to reschedule, or kind of what you're gonna try to do?
I mean, it's weird, man. I run an events business. We have 14 events this year. It's not looking good. I mean, I think we just might have to pack it in for the foreseeable future here. We've already been doing like online meetups and Zoom calls with our members, and just trying to replace like what that all meant to us. You know, so many of us planned out like, oh, me and my wife are thinking about going to Europe this summer. And now I'll go to like 2 DC events in Europe, and people plan their travels around it, and now nobody has any travel plans. So I really don't know.
Man, yeah, sorry to hear it. I know you guys will bounce back and do whatever you got to do. So, as we're winding down, I want to point out that you guys have been doing a lot of live streams. You've joined the YouTube world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
need your advice on that.
Yeah. What brought you to it? You guys just had some time, and how's it been going?
I don't know. I mean, I never really wanted to put my face on. I say I have face for radio. The idea of like performing for people. There's something so intimate about radio. Whereas you see it even in YouTube comments that they can get nastier because, people, they judge you. It's like, dance for me, monkey, like, whereas you're really listening to somebody on a podcast. But even me, I got uglier because I was trying to talk every day and I got mad about this article. And so, we were discussing online, like, I just was a real jerk on the live stream the other day. And something about like being videotaped, you almost feel like you got to dance a little, and you see people do like outrage stuff on TV. And so I just kind of like lost my sense of, and you feel vulnerable when you put yourself out there on video every day, like, but also it's good because you get the feedback and you can improve. So I don't really know. I mean, Ian and I always had this dream. I remember, I don't know, I can't remember chicken or egg, but I remember just going on and on and on in 2010 about whoever is the first person to start a daily podcast for this community is going to crush it. And then like 1 year later, John Lee Dumas launched his podcast. And we just always had this in our mind, like we'd always wanted to do a daily talk radio show because our heroes always did that. The Dave Ramseys of the world, the Howard Sterns of the world, those were the people who got us into radio. And just kind of being locked down at his place, it just felt like an opportunity to just take a little stab at it. That's
awesome. Yeah, I think
for fun.
I mean, I think you look fine, Dan. You don't have to be shy. You look great. So
thanks, man.
It's YouTube's a funny beast because you have the anonymous nature in many ways. So you get some weird comments. Sometimes people are they're just rude. So I happened to be watching live in that particular live stream that you're talking about, and I was just like, man, this guy's fired up. What's going on? I was like, calm down, buddy. But you made some interesting points. I'll point people in the direction of that topic. And it was about, can we talk about it? Is that cool?
Sure. Yeah.
So it was about the FIRE community, the financial independence, retire early, which I'm actually, I live in Longmont. So I'm friends with some of the folks that you were talking about. So I have to defend them here. No, I'm just kidding. But they, it was interesting because I think you were sort of presenting it as like a binary thing, but really there's more of a blend. And I think somewhere in the middle is kind of what I ended up doing and I mean, how long were you in a corporate kind of job?
4 years.
Okay. So I feel like part of that is valuable, even though I hated my 10 years in a management consulting gig.
Incredibly valuable.
But, you learn on someone else's dime. And then once you realize you hate it, then you can do something else. And you can this is what happened to my wife and I. We accidentally were saving a lot of money. And then, anyway, we won't go revisit all of the topics. But yeah, we lost a lot of money in the last couple months. But it's okay because we're still doing other stuff and everything's fine. But going back to the YouTube portion, I do love the instant feedback. You got a handful of people showing up, and then, I mean, you guys obviously can talk endlessly, so you don't have to worry about
no problems
filling the time. And I imagine it's probably pretty fun. So are you getting that sort of daily like radio show vibe that you guys kind of wanted?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the quality is there. It's interesting to see, like, when we do a weekly podcast, get a chance to, I mean, like you said about this FIRE argument, I mean, that's the sort of thing I would think about for a week, and I would write down all my arguments, and I would have processed all that stuff that I processed in public, which was essentially, I should have just been very specific. I was really disappointed that Mr. Money Mustache, who's one of the more famous people in the FIRE movement, like I felt like arrogantly doubled down with sort of very spiritual religious arguments about this idea that 100% of your money should go back into the market, especially now. And I feel like that's an existential risk to people that want to retire early. And that was very disappointing to see that. And I was really mad. And so I was kind of like just being all the things I was critiquing. The irony is I became all those things. It's like in any bad argument. And then I publicized it. So, it's something that on the podcast, it would have just been cut out because I would have said, oh, I'm not proud of that. Like, that's not good thinking. It's not useful to people. But because I'm on this live stream, it's just like we're all just kind of hanging out there, and I'm not thinking quite in those terms. I'm just sort of being a different version of myself.
Right on. Well, and I think both of you, and I left a comment on the video. Basically, I think both you and Pete, Mr. Money Mustache, like you have a stance that you believe in, and that's perfect. It helps your audience like self-select. Some people, like my wife, for example, she doesn't want to start a business. She's not an entrepreneur. She feels much more comfortable in a more passive activity. So investing is better for her, and she doesn't want to start a business. So I know I like starting businesses, and I love like the entrepreneurship aspect of it. And I actually went back to a 2017 article that you wrote about the FIRE community, and like we all want freedom with our time, but index funds versus or real estate versus like starting a business. And well, TMBA is about starting businesses. So
I can clarify specifically, like I love the FIRE movement. Like that's why I know so much about it. I remember Ian and I were rejoicing when Mr. Money Mustache started his blog because we're like, finally somebody gets it here. And he does get it. I totally agree with almost everything he's doing. The things I would say, like specifically to someone like your wife, like I don't think she should become an entrepreneur. That's not my stance at all. Like I think it's totally cool not to. I don't think the idea though that because someone doesn't, I think it's not completely wise to say, well, because I don't care about wealth generation, I'm just going to completely outsource it to somebody else. That's all. I think that's just risky, and this is an existential risk that it would take me more time. I don't want to go into like the details of why I think that. And there's one other thing that gets me like emotionally riled about FIRE, but I think that makes sense. It's like a sibling, you know what I mean? Like I'm totally FIRE myself. Like I want to retire early. I want financial independence. I want to be frugal, love all that stuff. It's just like there's a couple issues that this idea that like our vehicle should be so dependent on the American consumer economy and the US dollar, I think is risky for our generation. And I don't want people to like risk their whole careers on one idea. That's all.
Indeed. Yep. And I think we ended up agreeing, even though during the live stream, I was like, Dan, come on, man. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
but yeah, I was like, actually, I agree with all this.
Sometimes I'm going to talk noise, man. I let you down. It happens.
It's very good. Well, and like we're saying, the live streams are tough. And I mean, you actually did pretty good. Although, I mean, how many have you done so far? Like,
I don't know, 10 or 11 or so.
Because every now and then in a live stream, there's some troll out there.
What have you learned from? I've watched one of yours the other day just to get a sense for how you're doing it. You pull up Ecamm Live.
Yep.
And
yeah, so
that allows you to be like a kind of a TV producer.
Yes, and I'm not 100% used to all the tools that you can do, but they do have a little sound effects board, so you can have a little audience cheer or a chime if you want to get cute. And you could add all the sound effects that you want in there. But the really cool part is I used to do these live streams where it's just a webcam, you're just talking the whole time. But Ecamm Live allows you to play clips. So I've been chopping up some of my long interviews, like this interview, Dan. We will chop it up into 3 to 10 minute segments or so.
Right.
Because a lot of people don't want to watch us talk for 1 hour. So they'll just get the 3-minute segment. So I'll download those segments and then play them. And that gives me a time to go go to the bathroom, go grab a drink of water or something like
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
and I could just run the clip and then go do something else. So just a little bit more production value. And yeah, like you said, you're kind of like a producer, just like playing the clip and running it a little bit tighter, because before it was a little bit rough.
Right.
So, and I was going to say, you guys have done a pretty good job, and you have a good set of folks in the chat, a lot of DC people in there. I encourage people to check it out. By the way, I'm in there probably about once a week or so, watching you guys record live, and
watching us fall all over ourselves. You never know what's going to happen, man.
You don't, have you had any mishaps so far, or everything's good?
I don't know. We messed up with the audio one time, and I think the whole thing is a mishap right now, Doug. That's basically my opinion. I mean, it's just so ghetto. We're just doing it for fun, just hanging out together, and I don't know. I agree. It's basically like these our friends coming by and talking a little shop and touching base with people that is sometimes maybe a little bit more comforting or engaging than just watching CNN or whatever. So that's kind of the idea.
Very good. Well, Dan, where can people find you?
TropicalMBA.com. That's where I hang out. Check it out and give us a listen.
Awesome. Yeah, one of my favorite shows. Thanks a lot, Dan.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks again to Dan. Definitely check out their channel. I usually try and watch as many live streams as I can from them per week. Usually it's like 1 or 2. The morning is sort of my prime time to get some work done. So do check it out, and we'll catch you on the next one.